Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining our information session today on the Multiculturalism, Indigenous, and Inclusion Grant Program, or MIIG program. Today, we'll be taking an in-depth look at the MIIG application form with you. So this session builds upon the two general information sessions we held last week. If you missed those sessions, we recorded it, and it is now available on our website at alberta.ca to watch. My name is Ben Hart, and I'm a Community Grants Advisor with the Community Grants Unit with Alberta Culture and Status of Women. I work on the MIIG program along with my colleagues who are with us today, starting with Rochelle.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rochelle Ishmael, and I am the MIIG Program Coordinator.
Thank you, Rochelle. So if you attended our last session and determined that your organization is eligible and is interested in applying for MIIG funding, we hope this session will help you with some application tips and tricks and give you a better sense of the things we're looking for in an application, a sense of what we think makes a strong application. If you registered through Eventbrite, we want to remind you that our in-depth walkthrough of the MIIG budget will be from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. tomorrow, Wednesday, July 21st. If you've not registered for our session tomorrow, don't worry, there is still space. Please visit our website to sign up through Eventbrite. So we don't have a break scheduled for our 2-hour session today. So if you need to take a break at any point, feel free to step away. This session and our session tomorrow is intended to be very interactive. So we will walk through the application form together, section by section, and pause to take questions at the end of each section. If you want to ask a question, you'll have two options. You can type a question into the chat box and our team will monitor questions there. And when invited, after we've taken questions from the chat box, you can ask a question by unmuting your microphone. We would also note that we will prioritize questions that are the most relevant and applicable to all interested applicants, rather than questions that are specific to only one organization. For those more specific questions, we invite you to contact our office directly. So we may or may not need the full 2 hours today, but if we run out of time and are not able to address your question, please contact our office to follow up.
We would love to know who you are and which organization you are representing today. We would greatly appreciate if you'd rename yourselves in the participants list for us. To find the participants list, click the participants button in the main menu bar of Zoom. It will be located at the bottom of your Zoom window. So following the directions provided to you on the screen, hover your mouse over your name in the participants list. Then click the More button. Next, click Rename, and then enter your name and organization. When you've completed this, click the OK button. Right now, I would like to take a moment to recognize that this is the homeland of many diverse people in Alberta, including First Nations and Métis whose ancestors have walked this land since time immemorial. We are grateful to work, live, and learn on this traditional territory that includes Treaties 6, 7, and 8.
And now for the moment you've been waiting for, we are going to walk through the MIIG application form with you step by step. While we will reference these tips throughout today's discussion, there are a few general tips on completing a MIIG application to keep in mind at all times. So it's really important you read the MIIG guidelines carefully before you start your application. The guidelines will help you determine whether your project will meet eligibility and program criteria. Projects are evaluated against these criteria, and projects that best meet criteria will be given higher priority. There's nothing worse than going to all the effort of pulling together an application package only to find out the concept or project plan itself is not in alignment with the MIIG guidelines and can't be considered for funding. The guidelines also tell you what is required of applicants if they are successful. Next, tell us the story of your project in your application, and we'll talk more about how to tell the story of your project in a few minutes. When responding to narrative questions, make sure your answers are clear and concise. So just the facts is something we like to say on our team. The answers don't have to be long to be good ones, but they should be long enough to directly and clearly answer the question. Make sure you answer the question being asked. You want to avoid the grant reviewer getting lost while reading your answers by providing a lot of unnecessary information. And don't assume the reviewer knows what you're talking about. Tell them what you're going to do, who will benefit, and why the project is important. Finally, research other organizations for partnership opportunities, advice, or contributions to your project. Collaborating with community partners has a number of benefits that all demonstrates to our team that there is community support and buy-in for a project. And while letters of support from partners or community members are not required with your application, they are highly recommended. They speak to the need for the project.
This is the application title page, and it contains some helpful information. First, once you've completed the application and you are ready to submit it, this page tells you how. The preferred way to submit an application and all supporting documents is by email to maigprogram@gov.ab.ca. If for some reason you would rather submit your application by regular mail, our mailing address is listed here. If you choose to use regular or snail mail, make sure that your application package is postmarked no later than the application submission deadline of September 1st. Second, this page also contains a number of links to resources that can guide you through writing your application. This includes the MIIG guidelines. You should read these guidelines prior to starting your application, but we also encourage you to refer to it during the writing process and even after you have finished writing. Believe it or not, we refer to the guidelines regularly when we review applications to make sure that they closely align with the requirements listed in the guidelines. The Application Assistance Tool is also worth a close look. This tool contains a number of frequently asked questions, tips on writing a good application, and provides some definitions relevant to the MIIG program, like clarifying what we mean when we say intercultural or cross-cultural. The application form also contains links to the budget template and the direct deposit application forms. The bottom of the page also has a link to our website so that you have easy access to many different resources to help you write a good application and lead a great project. Third, we've included our phone number in case you have any questions about the MIIG program or application form. Sometimes it is a good idea to talk through something with a member of our team to see if your idea is on track and in alignment with the program guidelines. It is better to have this conversation before you submit your application rather than after. So please call or email us. We will be happy to help you.
The next 3 slides go over the application checklist found on page 2 of the application. One of the first things we check for when reviewing an application is that organizations are in good standing under their incorporation body. So that's something you'll want to look into as well. If your organization is registered through Alberta Corporate Registry, you can contact them to find out whether your organization is in good standing. It's a good idea to take care of this issue before you go to all the effort of writing and submitting an application package. For example, if your organization is a registered not-for-profit society, you want to make sure that you are not in danger of being struck from the registry as a result of being 3 years behind filing annual returns. You want to be as up-to-date as possible in your annual returns to avoid any issues with any funder, including community grants. Another thing you'll want to look into, hopefully prior to working on your application, is whether you have any outstanding reporting or accounting requirements for any previous Government of Alberta grant. If an organization has an outstanding final accountability report with our department, we won't be able to approve an application and enter into a new grant agreement. So it's really a good idea to clear up any outstanding accountability and reporting requirements for government before working on a new application. It could end up saving you a lot of time and stress later on.
This part of the application checklist is a reminder to complete all sections of the application, which includes the budget template and the application for direct deposit. As mentioned a few moments ago, we will be leading an in-depth walkthrough of the MIIG budget template tomorrow. For now, it is enough to know that you will need to complete a MIIG budget template and submit it with your application package. You'll note that this section of the checklist has a link not only to the budget template itself, but a link to an example budget as well. Another key piece of the application we require is the application for direct deposit as well as a copy of a void check. Please follow the link to the direct deposit form and fill that out. We need to have both the completed direct deposit form and a void check from every single applicant. If we don't receive both items in your application package, we will ask for those items in your application review emails. It is a great idea to take care of this issue early on. There's nothing worse than having your application approved, being ready to hire staff or contractors, and get your project started only to find out that your grant payment will be significantly delayed by not having your completed direct deposit form and void check on file.
This is the final section of the application checklist. We ask for a list of executives from your organization as a separate document in your application package. This list is so that we are able to contact someone at your organization in the event that the primary contact or signing authority listed with the application are not available. We also need to take a look at your financial statements, or for a newly formed organization that doesn't yet have financial statements, a bank statement. Financial supporting documents are critical to our review process. They give us a lot of information. For example, an applicant's capacity to plan and deliver a project, information about an applicant's matching contributions towards MIIG projects, information about an organization's mission, information about an organization's annual operating budget, remembering that it is a program priority to fund organizations with an operating budget of less than $500,000 a year. The checklist is also a reminder to check all the boxes in the grant agreement section and to make sure that section has been reviewed and signed by someone at an organization who is authorized to sign a grant agreement. We will speak about this next item during our in-depth walkthrough of the budget related to letters of support from donors. This checkbox is a reminder that if a donor plans to donate materials or professional services towards your project, you should include a letter from that donor. The donor's letter lets our team know that the donated material or service is fair market value and helps us better understand how your organization plans to match government MIIG funding. If you'll be working with a partner organization to plan and/or deliver your project, we ask that you submit a letter of support from that partner. That letter of support gives us a sense of the partner's commitment to your project, which in turn likely strengthens the feasibility of your project and strengthens your application. While we don't require you to submit letters of support from the community, some of the strongest applications include letters of support from the community. Community support letters give us a better sense of the need for your project in a community, as well as a sense of the community's buy-in for the project. Finally, if your MIIG project will involve hiring new staff or contracting a new individual, please submit a job description along with your application package. Remember that, as per section 3.5.5 of the MIIG guidelines, ongoing operational expenses like wages or salaries are not considered eligible expenses. So if your organization has an existing staff person, you cannot use the MIIG grant to increase that person's wages or hours of work unless their supervisor confirms in writing to us that the additional hours are specific to the MIIG project and are above and beyond that person's regular duties. If the position will be new, please attach a job description.
In this section, found on page 3 of the application, you will need to select which MIIG funding stream you are applying for. 1, the Multiculturalism and Inclusion funding stream, or 2, the Indigenous funding stream. MIIG has a specific Indigenous stream to acknowledge the historical and continued impacts of colonization on Indigenous peoples and to advance the province's efforts towards reconciliation. If your project will focus primarily on promoting the inclusion of Indigenous peoples, then you should select the Indigenous stream. Selecting the stream would mean that your project would work towards supporting greater cross-cultural and/or intercultural understanding between Indigenous peoples and other populations, or raising awareness of the impacts of discrimination experienced by Indigenous peoples and working together to reduce barriers faced by Indigenous peoples, or celebrating Indigenous peoples and creating more welcoming communities for them, or lastly, helping Indigenous peoples living in Alberta to feel that their heritage and culture is valued. A helpful hint if you select the Indigenous stream is that our team has found that the most successful applicants to the Indigenous stream involve, in a meaningful way, elders and Indigenous knowledge keepers in their projects. In this way, the project is more likely to be planned and delivered in a way that is authentic, relevant, and respectful to Indigenous communities. Don't forget to use the drop-down calendar to select the submission date.
Section A can be found on page 3 of the application and includes basic information about your organization, such as its address. We won't spend too much time on this slide other than to say a couple things. So in this first box, you'll need to enter your organization's incorporated or legal name. If you file an annual return through Alberta Corporate Registry, the organization's legal name will be written on any official documents from Alberta Corporate Registry, such as a proof of filing. If your incorporated or legal name is different than your operating or common name, please include only the incorporated legal name in this box. In the second set of boxes, you'll need to enter the name of the act that your organization is registered under, whether provincial legislation such as the Societies Act, Libraries Act, or Part 21 of the Business Corporations Act, federal legislation, a First Nation or Métis settlement in Alberta, or a publicly funded post-secondary institution under Alberta's Post-Secondary Learning Act. Be sure to include your organization's registration number and registration date in this section.
This part of Section A asks you to enter the contact information for individuals at your organization. The first contact is for someone at your organization with legal authorized signing authority. The second contact is for someone at your organization that will serve as the primary contact between our team and your organization. If we need to contact your organization or ask for additional information about your application, this is the person we will contact first. Please ensure that the legal authorized signing authority contact and the primary application contact are two different people. If you list the same person as both contacts, we will likely follow up with you after we review the application to ask for a second contact at your organization.
The questions in Section B, Organization Overview, found on page 4 of the application, helps us to get to know your organization better, to know more about its purpose, experience, and capacity to lead a MIIG project. The answers should be concise, so just the facts. First, tell us briefly about your organization's mandate. What is the reason your organization exists? Is it to provide programs and services to a particular group? Is it something else? These types of mandate or purpose mission statements can often be found in your organization's financial statements as Note 1. Second, briefly tell us about the kinds of programs and/or services that your organization provides. Third, we'll ask for some specific numbers. So how many individuals did your organization serve in the last year? How many staff did your organization employ in the last year? And how many volunteers did you engage in the last year? Fourth, briefly tell us in 300 words or less, what is your previous experience working on activities and initiatives related to multiculturalism or inclusion? Fifth, and finally, tell us what your annual operating budget is. All of this information gives us a good overall picture about your organization, which is really helpful when we have to make decisions about which organizations have the highest capacity to deliver a MIIG project.
Section C of the application is a snapshot or quick overview about your proposed project. First, enter the title of your project here. The title does not need to be long, but should give the grant review team a sense of what the project is all about. Second, let us know what type of project you'll be doing by selecting only one of the checkboxes at the top of this section. Will you be leading a new project or initiative? Remember that under section 3.3 of the MIIG guidelines, which is eligible projects, the MIIG program is intended to support standalone initiatives, new programming, or resources. Our team normally sees the bulk of applications under this project type. Or will your project be an expansion or new phase of an existing program? If so, in the box provided, tell us how. We don't generally see a lot of applications that fall under this type of project. In the MIIG application tool found on our website, on page 6, we outline what we would consider to be an acceptable expansion or a new phase. This would include a new development or significant growth requiring broadening of the scope or reach of the current project, or an evolution in the direction or purpose of the project which requires an expansion or new phase, or a complementary activity or focus that supports the initial project. An expansion or new phase would not include the same project delivered in a different geographic location or nominal changes in the project to include different demographics. For example, the same program marketed to a new audience. Will your project be an event? If your project will be an event, it must meet all 4 criteria listed in section 3.3.2 of the MIIG guidelines. These include involvement of more than one cultural group in the development and delivery of the event, fostering and demonstrating inclusion, events that build greater awareness and understanding of the diversity of people in community, active promotion to other cultures to participate in the event, and attendance must be open to the general public. Third, this text box is your opportunity to briefly describe your project in under 150 words. A general tip is that your response should be direct and to the point. One way to look at this response would be to pretend you have 20 seconds in an elevator ride with someone to describe what your project is all about. Just like you would want the person in the elevator to come away from your conversation understanding your project, you also want the person reviewing your application to clearly understand it too. The next section of the application contains a number of long answer or narrative questions that will be providing more details about your project. This question is a very high-level snapshot about what you plan to do. Fourth, this piece of information is very important. This is to tell us the dollar amount that you are requesting from the MIIG program. This amount should match the grant request entered into your budget. Fifth, when we review your project, a key consideration for our team is the scope and impact of your project. Who will benefit? Will it be the people in your community or city? Will it be a region within the province? Will it benefit the entire province, or perhaps it's even bigger? Sixth, are the specific groups of people that your project hopes to reach? Check all of the boxes that apply. Seventh, we want to know about the location of your project. Will your project be delivered in a rural or urban setting? Please provide the project's address. Finally, please tell us what your project will start and when will it end. In general, we advise that the start date for your project is after you have confirmed that your project has been approved. When applying in September, you can generally anticipate a notification of approval or decline 5 to 6 months later, so in February of 2022. Just a quick caution, under Section 6 of the application procedures in the MIIG guidelines, it states that any project expenses that are incurred before our team receives your application are not eligible for funding. Incurring expenses prior to approval of the application is at your own risk. Projects that have been started and end up being declined cannot be resubmitted for a funding at later date. That is why it is best to wait to start your project until it has been approved.
So now we're at section D. So this section is your opportunity to provide more detailed information to us about your project. The first part of section D asks you 3 questions: the outcome of your project, the project type, and the change you hope to see in individuals who were involved. The first question on this page is about project outcomes. The MIIG program has 4 intended outcomes. These outcomes can be thought of as changing the hearts and minds of Albertans when it comes to inclusion and understanding of other cultures. Outcomes are your project's results, and the outcomes are: Albertans have cross-cultural and/or intercultural understanding. Albertans are aware of the impacts of discrimination and work collectively to encourage full participation of individuals in society. Diverse backgrounds are celebrated by Albertans, creating welcoming and inclusive communities. And finally, Albertans feel their cultures and heritage are valued. While the outcomes are interrelated and involve some overlap, think about which outcome will be the primary intended outcome of your project and select only one outcome in your application. The second question is about the type of project you are planning. Is it a training and education type of project? So that kind of project includes initiatives to increase cultural awareness and/or help Albertans understand the impact of discrimination as a full barrier to participation of individuals in society. Examples include workshops, roundtables, conferences, community conversations, social media initiatives, and resources or tools for community use. Or is it a capacity building type of project? So that type of project builds community capacity through a number of activities. Examples include sharing promising practices, research, and information, developing strategies to support multiculturalism, cultural exchange, and inclusion, evaluating existing initiatives and programs to eliminate barriers to accessing these initiatives or programs, and finally, engaging community supporters or experts, elders, and partners in the project. And please note that any capacity building project needs to have an obvious public or community benefit. Projects that are insular in nature, where the benefit is only internal to your organization, are not likely to be approved. A good example is professional development for staff or volunteers. To have a better chance at being approved, the application needs to demonstrate how the staff or volunteer training will not only build your team's capacity to deliver better programs and services, but also how will they implement what they learned. As well, the implementation of that training or professional development should take place shortly after completing it. Or the third type of project, is it a community event? So this kind of project will use an event to enhance cultural awareness, actively encourage participation of diverse people, and celebrate the Indigenous and multicultural fabric of Alberta. Remember that to be considered for funding, community events must meet 4 criteria. So they are: 1, involve more than one cultural group in the development and delivery of the event, fostering and demonstrating inclusion. 2, build awareness, greater awareness and understanding of the diversity of people and community. 3, active promotion to other cultures to participate in the event. And 4, attendance must be open to the general public. The third question is, what change will you measure in the individuals involved in the project? Do you hope to change people's attitudes about inclusion, for example? Do you hope to change people's level of awareness about an issue? Do you hope to change their level of understanding about something? For example, the impacts of discrimination or the benefits of diversity and inclusion? Or do you hope to increase people's skills and knowledge about an issue that relates to the program outcomes? At our session from last week, one of our application tips and tricks found in the application assistance tool on our website, posted in the chat box, was to think of the application as a story that has a beginning, middle, and end. So to begin, tell us why you want to do your project. What's the need for your project? What problem are you trying to solve? In the middle, tell us how your project will address the need, problem, or opportunity you've identified. And at the end of the story, what are your expected results or outcomes? How do you think you will change hearts and minds through your project? And how will you measure that change? So question 1 and question 3 on the next page are really the beginning of your story. Question 1 is a 3-part question that asks, tell us why you've chosen to do this project. What problem are you trying to solve, or what opportunity are you trying to build on? In the last slide, we talked about project outcomes. The second question under question 1 asks you to think about how your project will support that outcome. So for example, if you selected the outcome, Albertans have cross-cultural and or intercultural understanding, briefly tell us how. The third part to this question asks you to tell us why your organization is the best organization to lead this work. Why are you the best organization to lead the project and not another organization in the community? Remember that answers to questions like these don't have to be long to be good. Be sure you answer the 3 questions we are asking here with clear and concise answers. Try to avoid providing unnecessary information because we don't want to get lost in reading the answer. Question 2 is a timeline of activities for your project. This is an overview of your project from start to end. This is one of my favorite questions to review in the application because it's such a good snapshot of all the different components of your project from start to finish. In this question, you'll need to give us a description of each project activity. For example, if you're planning to develop a public workshop about reconciliation, some of the activities may include connecting with Indigenous knowledge keepers and elders as part of workshop research and planning, marketing activities as part of outreach to a range of groups you would like to participate in the workshop, training for your staff and or volunteers who may be involved in planning and or delivering the workshop, and then of course the workshop or workshops itself. Also, any activities to evaluate the success of the workshop. How will you know that you changed hearts and minds? And then finally, writing and submitting your final accountability report. Be sure to include a date range on the left-hand side of the table for each activity. And a couple of tips. So make sure the dates listed in this table align with the project start and completion dates you enter in section C, project overview. We recommend that your project start date be after you receive notification of whether you've been successful in receiving a MIIG grant. Project expenses that incur before the application has been received by program staff are not eligible to be included in the project budget. Incurring expenses prior to approval of the application is at your own risk, just like Rochelle said a few minutes ago. Remember as well that projects have been started and are declined cannot be resubmitted for funding at a later date.
Continuing on with the narrative questions about your project, question 3 asks, what is the demonstrated need for this work in the community and how will this project address that need? Again, as mentioned previously, the need is really the beginning part of your project story. This question also has 2 parts. First, what is the need for your project? Second, how will your project address that need? An example could be that you have observed racial tensions in your community and certain ethnocultural groups have reported instances of discrimination that is a barrier to their full participation in society and the economy. To strengthen your answer, when you are even able to provide survey data. You have identified an opportunity to address these issues through community roundtables and social media initiatives. There are a few ways you can approach learning about the needs in your community. You can identify these needs informally through conversations with individuals, organizations, and groups in your community. You can assess the needs more formally, such as holding a community dialogue event, or part of assessing needs can also include looking at data that might be available perhaps through Statistics Canada or elsewhere. The next series of questions are really the middle part of your project story. Question 4 asks, how will you ensure your project is accessible to its participants and the broader public? You read about what we mean by access in section 4.3.4 of the MIIG guidelines. Essentially, what we want to know is how you will reduce barriers for individuals to participate in your project. How will you share the resources, findings, and our learnings from the project both inside and outside of the community? How will you ensure broader public involvement beyond your organization's direct membership? Question 5 asks, are there experts, professionals, knowledge keepers, or others supporting your project, and what is their role? Your application will be strengthened if you can tell us about the experts, professionals, or knowledge keepers that will be involved in your project. For example, if you selected the Indigenous stream of the MIIG program in your application, you would definitely want to engage with Indigenous knowledge keepers and elders in the relevant Indigenous communities. Otherwise, the information you share publicly through your project may not be appropriate or authentic. Question 6A is all about how you will collaborate and partner with other organization groups or individuals. There are a few components to this question, but to break it down, please tell us what is your relationship with the partner, how long will they be involved in the project, whether that be the design and planning of your project, delivering the project, or following up on the results of your project. Once again, a reminder that responses to these questions do not have to be long to be good. Just stick with the facts and the answer will be stronger. Question 6B is all about partnerships and collaborations, but in this question, we want you to tell us what stage your partnership is at. Select one. Is it at the initial stage? Have you already had conversations about the projects with partners and collaborators? Have they verbally confirmed their involvement in and support of the project? Or have they formally committed to you and the project through a letter, one that you plan to submit with the application? Working with community partners has a number of benefits and can demonstrate that there is community support for your project. The project is more likely to be based on promising practices. The project is less likely to duplicate an existing project or could even leverage a partner's existing work. There may be greater public benefits from the project. While letters of support from partners or community members are not required with your application, they are recommended as they give our team more confidence about the need for the project and assurance that the community is fully behind it.
Question 7 asks about project impact. Specifically, one is the number of people that the project will directly impact. How many people will have firsthand knowledge of and experience with your project, whether it was a training and education workshop, whether it was a capacity building activity, or an event. We also ask about the number of people that the project will indirectly impact. It could be that many people, perhaps many more people, may hear about the work of your project later on or indirectly. We'd like to know about that as well. This question also asks if you can tell us how you determine the numbers. For example, maybe you will plan a roundtable session with 25 participants. The number of people directly impacted would be 25. Maybe you anticipate that those 25 people will share what they learned with 2 other people each. The number of people indirectly impacted in that case would be 50. Question 8, still within the middle of your story, is also really about project impact. This question asks how your project could work with individuals outside your community or organization membership to promote greater cross-cultural and/or intercultural awareness and understanding. We ask this question to get a sense of the scope and impact of your project, to get a sense of the public benefit. Question 9 continues the theme of project impact and project benefit. This question asks, will your project develop any tools or resources? And asks you to describe how those tools or resources will benefit other communities, organizations, or individuals. A tool or resource could be a print publication or document, an online publication, a radio broadcast, a podcast, a whole range of things. The main point is to tell us how the public will benefit, whether that's an individual, an organization, or a community. Question 10, the final narrative question, is the ending of your story. This question is about project results and outcomes. So one of the questions is, how will you determine whether your project achieves what you set out to achieve? And the other is, how will you measure these results? The last couple of questions address the so what of your project. So if you're successful in receiving a MIIG grant, then so what? What difference will you be able to make through your project? Will you be able to change hearts and minds about other cultures and the importance of inclusion? If so, tell us how. Will you survey people who participated in your project? Will you talk to them informally? Will you monitor how many people access your online resource or how many people read your publications?
Section E is the budget template, which is a separate document available to download on our website. We won't be going over the budget template today because we have our in-depth walkthrough tomorrow from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m., and that's Wednesday, July 21st. If you have not registered for our session tomorrow, don't worry, there still is space, so please visit our website to sign up.
So just like Section E, Section F is a separate document from the application form. Should an applicant be successful, our department will use electronic funds transfer as a safe and efficient way to deposit grant funds directly into your bank account. As part of your application package mentioned in the checklist section, we do need both a void check with the legal name of your organization and a completed application for direct deposit form available on our website. This form has a couple requirements and must include authorization by a representative of your organization, authorization by your financial institution. With this requirement, we need to look for two things. So a bank teller stamp and a signature by the financial institution or bank officer. And a couple final notes at the bottom of the page here. So please ensure your organization's legal name, as it is incorporated, is the name on the direct deposit form. You do not need to resubmit an application for direct deposit form if you've provided this information to another grant program in our ministry in the past year, as long as the information has not changed.
This slide is Section 1 of the grant agreement, which is embedded in the application form, which will save considerable time down the road should you be successful in receiving MIIG funding. We will not read the grant agreement during our presentation today, but every applicant should read this section very carefully as it is a legally binding agreement that your organization will be signing. On this page, please write your organization's legal name or incorporated name in the box provided. This slide shows more clauses of the grant agreement.
This slide shows Section 2 of the grant agreement. So please enter your legal or incorporated organization name here, and please carefully read and check all the boxes in this section. This section of the grant agreement is for the signature of someone in your organization who is authorized under your organization's bylaws and policies, for example, to sign for a grant. Please ensure that in this section, the appropriate person with your organization signs and dates the grant agreement, includes a daytime phone number and an email address in case a member of our team needs to reach them, and prints their name and position title with your organization. The last part of the grant agreement is an optional checkbox. If you want the department to contact you about ministry initiatives or announcements, please check this box. Sometimes we want to be able to share information with you about resources relevant to the nonprofit sector, or grant program changes, funding announcements, and/or opportunities to share your feedback on our programs.
And that's it. Now some final considerations for you. This slide outlines the criteria that our team looks at when we review a MIIG application. These criteria found in Section 4 of the MIIG guidelines include your organization's capacity, project viability and financial feasibility, project impacts, access, community and regional need, and other funding considerations. In terms of other funding considerations, we look at your project's readiness, whether an applicant has received prior Government of Alberta funding, whether the organization demonstrates financial need, the availability of grant funding, and the ability to complete the project with partial funding. And to recap from our sessions last week, organizations that are the most likely to receive MIIG funding include organizations that best meet the guideline criteria, organizations with an annual operating budget under $500,000, applicants that have not received prior Government of Alberta funding, and those that can demonstrate the involvement of partner organizations from other diverse communities in the project's development, delivery, and follow-up.
And just a reminder that MIIG applications need to be submitted by email by September 1st or postmarked by September 1st if you plan to use snail mail. Notification of whether your application has been successful will be approximately in February of next year. After September, the next intake of MIIG applications will be March 2022, with notification approximately in August 2022. And to demystify the grant process, once you submit your applications, we wanted to say a few words. When you submit your application by email or mail, a member of our team, usually Cheryl, is responsible for the intake and initial processing of your submission. Then the community grants advisor, me, or the MIIG program coordinator, Rochelle, reviews your application and all supporting documents. After this initial review, you can expect to receive a phone call and/or email from us in case we have any follow-up questions. We generally give you anywhere from 3 to 5 business days to respond to these requests to give you adequate time to gather information. Following this stage, a grant review panel is convened, which then makes a recommendation to our department leaders on whether the project should be funded or not. And that's it. So we've had a number of questions along the way today, but if there are any other questions that we haven't addressed, now is a good opportunity to ask those. And we really want to just thank you for being with us. And we've appreciated the opportunity to connect with you and have a conversation about the program. As always, please reach out to us if you have further questions or need some one-on-one support in thinking about your application. So thank you again from our team and have a wonderful day.